I'll never forget the way my wife stumbled into our house that afternoon, gasping, eyes shut tight, her face red and wet like she'd just escaped a fire. But this wasn't from heat. It was pepper spray. And the woman who did it wasn't a stranger. It was Karen, the same HOA board member who had been harassing us since we moved into the neighborhood 3 months earlier. It started as petty complaints. Our recycling bin placement, how long we left our porch light on, even the way we trimmed our hedges. My wife Emily always tried to smooth things over. "We're new. Let's not ruffle feathers," she'd say. But Karen wasn't interested in peace. She wanted control. That day, Emily had gone for her usual morning walk. Nothing out of the ordinary. Sunny sky, a gentle breeze, and our golden retriever, Cooper, wagging his tail like always. She was only 2 blocks down when Karen pulled up in her golf cart, barking something about leash regulations. Emily tried to calmly explain that Cooper was leashed and under control. That's when it happened. Karen jumped out of the cart, waving her HOA clipboard like it was a badge. Witnesses later said she looked possessed. Without warning, she reached into her bag and blasted my wife in the face with pepper spray. Right there on the sidewalk, a neighbor rushed her home. Her eyes were swollen shut. She couldn't stop coughing. I drove her to urgent care, heart racing, hands shaking. The doctor said she'd be okay. But what about the emotional damage? We called the police immediately. But here's where it got stranger. Instead of arresting Karen, the responding officer hesitated. He looked nervous. I didn't understand until he leaned in and said, "Sir, this might go deeper than just Karen." I asked, "What do you mean?" He shook his head. "Let's just say the HOA board isn't exactly squeaky clean." I didn't know it then, but that pepper spray incident would blow the lid off something far bigger, something criminal. And the person sitting at the top of it all, the HOA president. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about exposing everything they'd buried. The very next morning, I was back at the precinct. Emily was resting at home, still recovering, her eyes swollen and burning from the chemical spray. But I wasn't going to let this go. Karen needed to be held accountable. As I sat down with Officer Dorsey, the same one who responded yesterday, he closed the door behind him and lowered his voice. "I ran her name through the system," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "And not just hers. I looked into the HOA president, too, Mark Laam. That was a name I had only heard once before, back when we first moved in. He hadn't shown up to welcome us, but his signature was on every HOA notice we'd gotten so far." I flipped through the documents Officer Dorsey handed me. At first glance, it looked like tax records, business forms, and some scanned police reports. Then, I saw it, a fraud conviction from 10 years ago. Financial misconduct, embezzlement, suspended sentence. "Wait," I said, "this guy runs the HOA." "Technically," the officer said, "he's not allowed to. Not with that record, but their bylaws haven't been updated in years, and no one's been watching." It didn't stop there. I found payment inconsistencies on neighborhood repairs, inflated contractor bids, and questionable fines slapped on certain homeowners, especially the ones who'd spoken up at community meetings. I left the precinct with copies in hand, heart pounding. I knew I had to be smart about this. If they'd gone this far, who knew what else they were capable of? That night, I sat with Emily and told her everything. She was shaken but determined. "We should talk to the neighbors," she said. "There's got to be others they've bullied." So, we did. We knocked on doors, made calls, and invited people to our backyard that Saturday afternoon. About a dozen families showed up. Some curious, others angry, and a few nearly in tears. And every single one of them had a story. One elderly couple had been fined $500 for painting their fence the wrong shade of white. A single mother was threatened with legal action for putting up Halloween decorations 2 days early. One man even claimed the HOA president had suggested hiring his own construction company for triple the normal price. Piece by piece, the picture came together. This wasn't just Karen being Karen. This was an entire corrupt machine, and Karen was just the face of it. And now we had enough to make noise. Saturday evening came faster than expected, and our backyard suddenly looked like a miniature town hall. Folding chairs, clipboards, lemonade pitchers, and one very focused group of homeowners who were tired of being pushed around. We weren't just talking anymore. We were planning. "We demand a formal emergency vote," said Greg, a retired accountant who had lived here for over 20 years. "We'll call them out in public. If the HOA president shows up, even better." The plan was to attend the next board meeting en masse. No more emails, no more quiet complaints, just truth spoken out loud with witnesses, documents, and evidence. We drafted statements, highlighted financial irregularities, and gathered witness testimony. I printed copies of Karen's police report and even attached a picture of Emily's injury with the doctor's notes. The board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday night in the community center. We got there early, but not before Karen. She sat near the front, smug as ever, flipping through her papers like none of this was her fault. Mark Laam, the elusive HOA president, was also there for once, tan, polished, and visibly annoyed. When the meeting began, they moved through the usual motions. Minutes approved. Budget update. Upcoming events. Then I stood up. "I'd like to raise a motion," I said, voice clear, eyes locked on Mark, "to call for a public vote of no confidence in this board." That got everyone's attention. "What's the basis for this motion?" Mark asked, trying to sound unfazed. "Criminal history, financial fraud, abuse of authority, and assault," I replied. I handed the packet of evidence to the secretary and passed copies around the room. Karen shot to her feet. "This is outrageous. This man's wife was trespassing." "No," I cut in. "She was walking her dog on a public sidewalk, and you assaulted her with pepper spray." Gasps echoed through the room. Then someone else stood up. Then another, and another. One by one, neighbors told their stories, each more disturbing than the last. Mark's confidence started to crack. Karen's hands shook. "This meeting is out of order," Mark barked, slamming his gavel. But nobody sat down. "You don't get to silence us anymore," said Greg firmly. That's when Officer Dorsey walked into the room. "Mr. Laam," he said, holding up a folder. "You'll need to come with me. There's new evidence tied to an open fraud investigation. You're being formally detained." The room exploded. Karen stumbled out of her chair, nearly tripping over her clipboard. The curtain had finally been pulled back, and the board's dirty secrets were now front and center. The moment Mark Laam was escorted out of the room in handcuffs, the atmosphere shifted. A collective sense of justice buzzed through the crowd. Neighbors whispered, some even clapped. But amidst the commotion, Karen was already plotting her next move. She stood frozen, her jaw clenched, eyes darting back and forth like she was calculating every escape route. The remaining board members, who had mostly kept quiet during the meeting, slid away from her like rats abandoning a sinking ship. By the time the meeting ended, Karen was the only board member left sitting up front, but she didn't leave quietly. The next morning, our doorbell rang. Emily and I exchanged a look. I expected a neighbor, maybe someone thanking us or offering more information. But when I opened the door, it was Karen, holding a manila envelope in one hand and a self-satisfied smirk in the other. "This isn't over," she said coldly, pushing the envelope into my chest. Inside was a cease and desist letter accusing me of slander, defamation, and harassment. Classic Karen. She thought a few legal-sounding threats would scare us back into silence. She didn't know us very well. I took the letter straight to my attorney. He chuckled when he saw it. "Looks like someone's desperate," he said. "You've got nothing to worry about." But Karen wasn't done. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. Our trash cans were knocked over. HOA citations suddenly showed up. Claims that our mailbox was leaning, that our porch light was too bright, and even that our dog was excessively friendly. It was clear Karen was using whatever scraps of power she had left to make life miserable. But her efforts only strengthened the community's resolve. The neighborhood had seen the truth now, and they weren't going to forget it. A recall petition was launched to formally remove Karen from the board. Within 48 hours, over 75% of homeowners had signed it. Then came the final blow. A whistleblower from inside the HOA office, someone Karen had bossed around for years, came forward with security footage from the day she pepper-sprayed Emily. The video showed Karen clearly approaching, escalating, and spraying without any provocation. It was airtight evidence. I handed it over to the police. 2 days later, Karen was arrested on charges of assault, harassment, and abuse of authority under HOA governance. As the cruiser drove away with her in the back seat, I couldn't help but think she'd built her little empire on fear, and now it was crumbling. Karen's arrest sent a shockwave through the neighborhood. For some, it was validation. For others, it was pure relief. After years of subtle intimidation, excessive fines, and her over-the-top behavior, Karen was finally held accountable, not just socially, but legally. Local news picked up the story. The headline read, HOA Vice President arrested for assault tied to larger corruption case. Emily and I kept to ourselves in the days that followed. After everything, we just wanted some peace. But it didn't take long before neighbors started stopping by, not just to thank us, but to ask what came next. And honestly, that question had been on my mind, too. We'd removed the cancer, but now we had to rebuild the body. The community came together like I'd never seen before. The interim board, made up of long-time residents who actually cared, hosted an emergency election. Greg, the retired accountant who had helped expose the fraud, was elected president. A local teacher took on the treasurer role. Emily, despite what she'd been through, agreed to help rewrite the outdated bylaws. One of the first changes they implemented, mandatory background checks for all future board members. No more hiding criminal records. No more unchecked power. As for Mark Laam, the investigation uncovered thousands in stolen HOA funds over the years, phantom landscaping contracts, inflated invoices, and personal expenses disguised as neighborhood improvements. He ended up pleading guilty. A judge sentenced him to house arrest, probation, and full restitution to the community. Karen wasn't as lucky. Between the pepper spray assault, the abuse of HOA authority, and the evidence of targeted harassment, the court handed her 6 months in jail, community service, and a permanent ban from holding any HOA-related position in the state. Watching her get let out of the courtroom in cuffs was a moment I didn't celebrate, but I did breathe easier afterward. Emily eventually healed physically and emotionally, but there were scars. Every time she passed the spot on the sidewalk where it all happened, her hand would tighten on Cooper's leash. Still, she stood tall, stronger than ever. The whole ordeal taught us something important. Abuse of power thrives in silence. But when good people speak up, when they stand together, even the loudest bullies fall. Our neighborhood is quieter now. The notices are fair, the rules make sense, and community events actually feel like something worth attending. Sometimes we sit on our porch in the evening, coffee in hand, Cooper lying at our feet, and for the first time since moving here, it feels like home. If you think Karen finally got what she deserved, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping real-life HOA dramas. Don't forget to smash the like button if you were rooting for justice, and drop a comment below. Have you ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA like this? We read every story, and you might just be featured in a future episode.